Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much for joining us for this press conference this morning on such short notice. But the government of Grenada thought it best that we provide a very prompt update to the nation following another meeting of the National Emergency Advisory Committee, which was held earlier this morning. The focus of this press conference will be Grenada's planned acceptance of evacuees from St. Vincent and the Grenadines if the need arises. As you may be aware by now, as of 8:41 this morning, April 9th, there was an explosive eruption at the La Soufrière volcano in St. Vincent. Prior to that, however, based on the increased activity detected by scientists monitoring the volcano, the Vincentian Prime Minister, Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, issued an evacuation order for the high-risk areas. In an immediate show of support and in solidarity with the Vincentian people, Grenada's Prime Minister, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, reiterated the country's pledge to accept evacuees. Immediately thereafter, the National Emergency Advisory Committee met in emergency session last night, and another meeting was held this morning. Hence our presence here now to update you. With me this morning, I have the Minister responsible for disaster management, Senator Winston Garraway, Dr. Bert Brathwaite of the COVID-19 Subcommittee, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Michael Francois, and National Disaster Coordinator, Mr. Benedict Peters. Thank you so much to members of the media and, of course, the listening and viewing public for joining us this morning. Senator Garraway, I'll turn first over to you to bring us up to date on where we're at this moment.
Thank you very much, Press Secretary Robinson, and good morning to the nation, those viewing and those listening to us at this point in time. It is indeed a very somber moment for us as a nation as we reflect on the experiences that our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent are currently experiencing. As you were advised, scientists this morning reported that at 8:41 we had an explosion at the Soufrière volcano as plumes of ash rose to up to 8 kilometers high. The government of Grenada reiterates its commitment to support our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Following the NEAC emergency meeting last night and again this morning at 9 a.m., it is an opportune time to update the nation on the preparations that are currently underway. The COVID-19 committee will advise on the health protocols in place. The RGPF will address the security, and NADMA, of course, will update on the general readiness of the agency to coordinate our response. At this time, we are not able to say the number of evacuees we are expected to host and the expected time frame. However, we have been advised by the government of St. Vincent that there are several steps to be taken on their end before the formal movements of the citizens to other Caribbean islands. As such, our approach is to ensure that we have all our required support systems in place to be activated once formal notification has been given to us. Of high priority is the continued safety of our citizens as we are still in the middle of a pandemic. We cannot afford to let our guards down. Therefore, we will be stepping up on our surveillance to ensure that we continue to effectively manage the crisis as we have been doing. Additionally, we are carefully monitoring developments on our sister isles. We are well aware of the close ties between the islands. We know that many families and friends will want to come home. Our concern is that these persons may do so undetected and undocumented. The border remains closed. However, we are prepared to facilitate entry in a controlled manner to keep everyone safe. we're asking our people to assist us in making sure that we are able to manage entry into Carriacou. We want to register, test, and quarantine and medically clear such persons before they can integrate within the various communities. Further details of the process will be communicated in the coming days. It is important for us to note that this emergency, this crisis that we are responding to, is one that can be drawn out over a long period of time, or it could be a short exercise or experience. But one thing we do know for sure, it's a dangerous exercise. And I will want to alert the nation at this point in time that with the explosion and the emission of ashes, the need to continue to wear masks is obviously of critical importance to ensure that our people who are affected with respiratory problems are secured. And of course, I want to believe Dr. Brathwaite, will expound on this. In closing, I want to say to the nation, this is a moment or a time when we are expected to continue to be neighborly to our brothers and sisters of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. As we can all appreciate, this potential evacuation of persons from St. Vincent and the Grenadines comes in the middle of a global health crisis. So that obviously is a concerning factor for many of us. With us here this morning is Dr. Bert Brathwaite of the COVID-19 subcommittee. Dr. Brathwaite, what can you add to the discussion at this point?
Thank you for me. First of all, let me, to all our viewers and listeners, let me apologize for the absence of Dr. Sean Charles, who himself is caught up, who's a member of the COVID health subcommittee, but who's caught up in yet another meeting at a regional level with his fellow chief medical officers. We, as minister, what Garraway would have alluded to, anytime there is a disaster, there are going to be health implications. With hurricanes, there are health implications, earthquakes even more. And certainly volcanoes will cause problems. When you add that to the present situation where there's a global pandemic with COVID, then you can see that the risks, we now are at increased risk of the spread of COVID and amongst ourselves, and obviously we have to be careful as we allow evacuees and relatives and friends to come over, that we monitor the process. So the intention of the Ministry of Health is to have all individuals. It's going to be important for any individuals who come in to go to certain centers to be quarantined first, where they will have first rapid antigen tests, and that those rapid antigen tests allow and result within a few minutes, and then they'll be subjected to PCR testing, and that takes a bit longer. Obviously, the samples have to be sent. If the individuals come into Carriacou, the samples have to be sent to Grenada, so it takes longer to get the result. Meanwhile, we obviously have to look after their well-being wherever they're situated. So to have them tested, to obviously one has to help with the emotional state as well, because it cannot be easy. Leaving your home, leaving everything, all your possessions in many cases, especially those who are closest to the center of the volcano, I would sense, and having to be dislocated and find yourself in another place. So that testing is going to go on and be on the mainland here, and on the mainland, we will be working closely in conjunction with St. George's University. They have been kind enough to have a number of rooms made available to us on the Grenada campus. And many of these rooms had already been modified to assist us in our COVID work, but there's going to be further work going on that. As we speak, it is probably ongoing and over the next few days in readiness for any numbers of people who have to come over and seek shelter here and to be with us for some period of time. So this is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is how we ourselves react, because as Dr. Charles would have advised members of the committee last night, first of all those individuals who are involved in care of people should themselves seek to get vaccinated. That is very important. Now, when you get vaccinated, that does not mean that you're protected immediately. It's going to take some 3 weeks or so for your antibody levels to build up to afford you some measure of protection. That's not full protection. Full protection is when you have had 2 shots of the vaccine. But it becomes more incumbent on individuals who are working with the process, and indeed the public as a whole, because in a situation like this, there's increased risk of transmission of COVID, especially as we reflect on how people have been behaving in recent days and weeks and over the last weekend. It might be a time to make people pause and pull back a bit, stop the lot of partying, because it is going to be, you're going to be even more at risk. Even if the evacuees and themselves not going to be partying, this is not something one would be anticipating and one would be seeking to prevent until they're cleared. But nevertheless, once this happens, there's going to be increased risk of transmission of the disease here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brathwaite. Now, even as we address the public health concerns amidst this situation, there are also some national security issues at stake as we consider the potential acceptance of evacuees from another country. We have with us Deputy Commissioner of Police, Michael Francois. DCP?
Thank you, Philo, and a pleasant good morning to all. And as Philo rightly said, this crisis would create additional burden on the Royal Grenada Police Force, but one that we have been planning for some time now. And we have activated, the Royal Grenada Police Force has activated its response operation plan to this situation that is unfolding in St. Vincent at this time. And so as soon as we received information sometime yesterday afternoon that the crisis, the situation has changed, we would have activated our plan and deployed several police officers into Garraway that would also augment the activities at Partygrenada as well. So we would have sent an additional asset to Garraway in the Coast Guard, and we would have had an increase in number of immigration officers that are stationed there. We would have increased that as well. Additionally, SSU personnel has been increased as well, and regular police officers. So we are now in a state of alert with respect to monitoring activities, not only in Carriacou and Partygrenada, but on the mainland in Grenada, because we would have adopted a two-pronged approach. As you are aware, we have persons who are coming into Grenada in response to the invitation of the Grenada government, which would be on one hand, and then we have several persons who want to use the opportunity to engage in illegal activity. And as I say that, just this morning, in our operational response, we would have picked up a Vincent National, who in collusion with the Grenadians, and several pounds of cannabis and a firearm and rounds of ammunition. So as we respond to this particular crisis with persons who are coming in, there are those on the other hand who will be using the occasion to engage in illegal activities. So we have our plan caters for this, and we have increased several of our patrols, not only around Grenada, but we would have had Coast Guard assets stationed at Partygrenada and Carriacou and in the waters of Grenada. And we will be vigilant at the same time in response to COVID-19. We have our curfew on at midnight. So it's a lot of work, and we would want to appeal to the Grenadian population that any activity that they see that seems to be illegal, and we're not speaking about the government-approved process of bringing in people into Grenada, we're looking at persons who are coming in illegally, and those who want to engage in illegal activity, to please notify the police so we can have a proper response in this regard. We are deploying several of our police officers into the various parishes and into Carriacou. At this time, the patrols and the monitoring of our coastline, etc., is in process. As soon as we receive directives from the policymakers with respect to how the process is going to unfold to persons who will be coming to Grenada legally, then we would have to secure those facilities to ensure that all those persons who comes to our shore is secure and that we do not have a mixture in respect to COVID-19 and what can happen. So we are doing what we are expected to do at this time. As I said, we are in a state of high alert with respect to persons coming in. We would want to know all who come to Grenada, who they are, what are their identities, and where they are coming from, so that we can do all our background checks with respect to ensuring that as we allow persons to come into Grenada, that the population remains safe and secure, and that we are aware of all who would have come into our country. So we have responded, and we have upped the number of persons and augmented Carriacou and Petit Martinique with personnel, immigration officers, etc. And we have several other activities going on the mainland, and we are going to be directed as to what the policy would be with respect to those coming in, and we will treat it in accordance. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much, DCP, for that update from the perspective of the Royal Grenada Police Force. Now, the National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, has a coordinating role to play with respect to disaster management in Grenada. Mr. Benedict Peters is the National Disaster Coordinator, and he's here with us this morning. Mr. Peters, what can you add from NADMA's perspective?
Thank you very much, Ms. Roberts. Thank you very much, and pleasant morning to viewers and listeners. The NADMA role here is a coordinating. We have to look at the humanitarian component of it. We have brothers and sisters in our sister isle who most likely will be displaced, and they're seeking our assistance. So NADMA will coordinate that process. As was mentioned before, there are 2 centers where we expect persons to come in, and at that station there we will provide the necessary support in working along with the Ministry of Health to ensure persons are healthy, and those are not, the necessary steps to be taken to so bring them to that state. So NADMA will work along ensuring that our personnel on the ground in that regard carry the necessary safety equipment and give the necessary PPEs and provide support to persons. We are asking for support among our population in this time of need, and we want help, and actually we'll have to feed them. We'll have to actually provide some hygiene kit support, and we'll have to provide sleeping accommodation and sleeping facilities. Those are some of the things that will be needed as persons coming for our assistance. We also want to make an appeal to providers of our Wi-Fi services, that if those services could be made available to those centers so that persons could contact their families back at home to create a piece of comfort to the individuals. That would be very, very helpful. So as we said, we are asking our Grenadian population to provide the support of our brothers and sisters in this time of need. I also want to mention here that we have a list from the St. Vincent Disaster Office that has sent a request, and it is considered immediate needs, volcanic emergencies. And they're asking for water tanks, 800 to 1,000 gallons. They're asking for 1,000 of those. 5-gallon buckets, 5,000 of those. Folding cots, 10,000. Portable potties, toilets, 150. Blankets, 30,000. field tents 50, field kitchen 2, sleeping mats 3,000, respiratory masks and filters 1,000, goggles 25,000, reflective vest 2,000, caution tape 1,000 feet, roll 100 of those, and hygiene kits. So that's a list that comes directly from the NEMO, which is the National Disaster Office in St. Vincent. And they have put out a need for those items. So persons out there who could assist in that regard will contact NADMA, and we will coordinate that process to help our brothers and sisters. The numbers that we are providing here, to contact NADMA at 440-8390, 8391, 8392, and 440-0838. So those are numbers that you could contact NADMA and provide assistance. NADMA is also will provide some assistance. We have asked Mr. Maxwin, who is in charge of the warehouse, so I identified items that could be part of that whole process. But we are asking the public, the general public, to come in the need of our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent who has suffered that natural event that has caused a level of discomfort and displacement. And we will be working along with our stakeholders in Grenada to coordinate an effort to ensure that they go through that period of distress in the best way they can. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peters. And of course, you heard there the appeal for supplies, much needed supplies for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We are one Caribbean, and as brothers and sisters, we ought to come to the assistance of others when the need arises. Many have stepped up to the plate in the past to assist us when we had our own difficulties. We have come to the question and answer segment. I note that media representatives present this morning, Linda Straker, Mikey Hutchinson, and Ride Along Live out of New York. Any questions from media?
Yes, I have a few questions, if I may.
Sure, Mikey, you can go ahead. Let's start with two to give the others an opportunity, and then we can circle back to you.
Okay. All right, good morning to your panelists and to the listening and viewing public. How soon can we expect to start receiving the evacuees, and what are the prerequisites for persons to be shortlisted for accommodation in Grenada?
Okay, thank you very much, Mikey, for this question. As stated before, the possible timeline for the receipt of evacuees will be within 2 weeks. As we heard from the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines this morning, the process to get people here is somewhat lengthy. But given that we as a nation have a requirement as it relates to the COVID protocols, and also the cruise liners that have provided assistance to evacuate the evacuees have their own protocols. Evacuees will have to receive at least 1 dose of the vaccine. The rapid antigen test will have to be administered. And of course, the government will have to do their own survey, as they've said, to ascertain from evacuees, potential evacuees, as to the countries they will like to be evacuated to. So that being said, we are ready. We make the necessary arrangement, and we have continued to make that commitment. And they will get back to us to say when. But as we have established, it will not be in a week's time.
Thank you, Mikey. Do you have another question?
Okay, yes, I wanted to know what is the maximum amount of people that we are preparing for at this moment?
Initially, we would have communicated to St. Vincent that we can take as much as 1,600. What we have been told, we may not get that amount at this point in time. So we are open to the number that we will get from the authorities in St. Vincent.
Linda, do you have any questions at this point, or can Mikey continue?
Yes, I have a question. Good afternoon. My question is really for now to Officer Francois. Can you tell us if there is a special name for that operation where officers has been deployed to Carriacou and PD Martinique, the number of officers involved, the length of time for that operation, 2-3 months, because this morning listening to Prime Minister Gonzalez, he mentioned that the research center says that something like that is a minimum of 4 months. We will see heavy activity in the volcano. So how long would we see our officers being stationed there for? And my question for either Mr. Peters or Senator Garraway, yes, we are going to accept a couple of evacuees. What is the length of time they will be allowed to stay in Grenada? I know they're CARICOM nationals and there might be some CARICOM rule to apply, but this is going to be at a certain number of, will they have a period to remain or would they be remaining indefinitely?
Okay, Linda. Thank you for the question, and I would not be able to tell you how long this operation is going to last. It depends on what the situation is in Vincent. What I can tell you is that we have permanent police activities that has been taking place in Carriacou. We have the Carriacou police station, we have the Petit Martinique police station. So there is a permanent presence in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. However, as a result of what is happening now, we are merely augmenting the security arrangements in Carriacou. And so our operation in response to this, we would have had to increase the number of immigration officers, the number of SSU officers, the number of regular officers for patrols, etc. And that is going to continue. I cannot tell an officer is be going there for 2 days or 3 days, but we would be sending persons up, changing the shift when required, and ensure that our numbers remain in Carriacou to augment the security operations there.
Thank you, DCP. Minister Garraway?
Thanks very much.
Can I just ask for some clarity?
Sure, Linda, go ahead.
The officers to remain. I did ask if that operation has a specific name. Around Christmas time, you have Operation Yuletide season. So, is there a name for that operation?
Not
and how much officers are involved with that?
I would not want to say, because, as I said before, this is a two-pronged approach with respect to St. Vincent, and at the same time we're dealing with illegal activities. I would not want to tell you that we have 5 persons or 6 persons, but in our own judgment, we have sufficient officers that we believe can handle the situation in St. Vincent that is unfolding, and at the same time sufficient officers to handle the potential illegal activities that may happen there. So with respect to tell you numbers, I will not be able to tell you numbers because of security reasons, but we are deploying and we're going to exchange persons as time goes on, refresh persons that are there, carry back persons to the mainland, and continue this operation for as long as it takes.
DCP, I think she also asked if there was a particular name for the operation.
No, not specific at this time, because, as I said, we were in a high alert mood before with respect to the operations at sea, and so we continue. All we did was augment the operations there and ensure that the security is beefed up in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. So if there is, I can get back to you if we do specifically name an operation there when we have a little more clarity of what is happening out there.
Thank you, DCP. Minister, her question was about the length of time that evacuees will be allowed to stay.
Thanks very much, Philo. It is not yet established how long this unrest at La Soufrière will go on for. However, the commitment that we have made to our brothers and sisters of St. Vincent is that we are there to support them as they experience this initiative. This unrest. So if this response will have to take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, we will be there to give support in this regard to ensure that we alleviate some of the discomfort and the suffering that our brothers and sisters is likely to experience as a result of this eruption.
Linda, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. I answer because I know I'm around old enough to remember when we would have had the situation in Montserrat and people would have come here, and there are people still who came from Montserrat who still reside in Grenada. That question was actually to follow up whether or not they would be allowed to stay in Grenada indefinite to work and do everything else because of what is happening and we have no idea how it's going to last. Or is it a case where we're going to say, you'll be going back after 6 months?
Well, what I can say, there are no similarities with the La Soufrière and what happened in Montserrat. La Soufrière and the eruption is just a few communities that have been impacted. What I can say as of this morning, Prime Minister Gonzalez would have said they are doing everything in-house to accommodate as much as they can. So they have been able to activate a number of shelters, and they have put a number of systems in place to house the residents at safe zones. Hence the reason why the list that the national coordinator would have read a while ago spoke to cots, tents, and field kitchen and so forth, because St. Vincent is working towards keeping as much as possible the people home. We have to be mindful that this eruption is in the middle of a pandemic, and you're trying as much as possible to, one, curtail or contain spread, and two, to keep families together. So as much as they can, they are working towards this. Hence the reason why they will do the survey and to get from residents those who would like to be evacuated and to where.
Thank you very much, Minister. We had Junior George on the line from Ride Along Life, but he's experiencing some difficulties. He has sent a question here. Okay, all right, Junior, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about I was experiencing some difficulties in the area that I was at earlier. Thanks for taking my question. Philo, we heard reports yesterday from folks on the ground in St. Vincent and the Grenadines of there being somehow forced to take the vaccine as they enter the shelters. We've seen videos that was put out on media on Facebook last night, and I wanted to find out, is Grenada making any of these requests for vaccinated persons coming from St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Are they making that type of request for evacuees coming into Grenada?
Thanks for the question, Junior. In discussion between the prime ministers of both countries, Prime Minister Gonzalez has assured his Grenadian counterpart that all evacuees will be required to have at least the very first dose of the COVID vaccine before they are allowed to evacuate to other countries. It was also recommended during the press conference that Prime Minister Gonzalez hosted yesterday that even persons going to shelters are encouraged to have the first dose of the vaccine. Here in Grenada, we have not made any such requirement, but our testing protocols will be quite rigorous. The evacuees will be given COVID antigen test on arrival, and after the requisite quarantine period, the PCR test will be administered. Dr. Brathwaite, is there anything you'd want to add to this?
No, I think you much covered it, Phil.
I wanted to give one piece in addition to this.
Go ahead, Minister, and I'll come back.
The cruise lines have made it a condition of entering the cruise ship that you need to have of your first dose of the vaccine. So in as much as you will want to ensure that you move people out of the danger area, you have to do this in a safe manner. And Prime Minister Gonzalez understands this very much, that if you are to move people from one area into another and enter into shelters, he understands that this is a present danger before us unfolding. And he has made this clear to the nationals that you will have to have the form of defense, and that is the COVID vaccine. And in as much as the cruise line is saying we have to protect our staff as well, and that is the form of defense we have, and they make this a condition. But Grenada is ready, and as we have said, the rapid antigen test will be administered, and the protocol will be administered when they arrive in Grenada. Because, of course, we have to be mindful of the risks that we are all exposed to.
And we should probably add at this point some clarity in case there are future questions with regard to the administration of the rapid test. That will be the antigen test, which is different to the antibody test, because there is some concern that if persons are tested after receiving the vaccine, they will show positive for the antibodies. However, that is not the case. With the antigen test, it does not detect any antibodies. Right, Dr. Brathwaite? I think I got that right?
You got it right. The antigen test picks up viral particles. So if you have been exposed to the virus, the antigen test will pick it up. The antibody, if you've been given the vaccine, you have not been given the virus. You have created something that's much like what is on the surface of the virus, and you develop an antibody to it. So when you check, you will have antibodies to it after a period of time. And you would have antibodies if you had been infected before or if you've been given the vaccine, but not the antigen test. Once you see that antigen test, that is, and it's positive, you are carrying the virus there, whatever the titer level.
Thank you, Dr. Brathwaite, for adding that the further clarity there. Junior George, do you have another question before we take someone else from the media? Okay, apparently Junior has not heard us. Mikey, we'll come back to you.
Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me?
I can hear you now. Yes, I can hear you now. Do you have another question?
Yeah.
Okay, please
go ahead. I'm aware
ahead.
of the antigen tests, and I'm also aware that the antigen test is less effective in picking up the particles than the PCR test. I myself took the antigen test at the peak of the time that I had COVID, and he told me that I did have COVID. So it's very unreliable in my perspective. Is there any reason why they're getting antigen tests rather than PCR tests, less than the fact that it's probably less expensive?
No, the antigen test is to get a quick feel of what is happening, because if you get, let's say, 40, 50 evacuees coming at one time, you want to be able to separate them. And anyone who is positive, you move them to one section of the building or to another building altogether. But they will be getting PCR tests as well. Everyone who comes in will be getting PCR tests, but it will take longer, especially if the test is done in Carraway. The samples have to be sent over here to be analyzed. But I know Dr. Charles and Minister Steele and the team from the Ministry of Health, they have started to work towards getting supplies over, getting additional supplies up and over to Carraway, and we hopefully be in a state of readiness for any influx of people, personnel, evacuees, sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Brathwaite. Mikey Hutchinson, we'll come back to you now. Do you have more questions?
Yes, I do. And we are in the middle of what can become a humanitarian crisis for a certain section of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Should people decide, based on whatever reason, that they would want to leave St. Vincent and the Grenadines and go over to Carraway for food or for water, and they are identified by the police, what steps will the police be taking then? Are they going to be putting them to the system so that they can be tested and quarantined or so, or probably deported?
that. Mikey, we are working along with the health officials in Carriacou as well. And if any person would have come into Carriacou and not going through the proper official entry points, they would have to be taken to one of those sites that are approved with the medical facilities. They would have to also see an immigration officer who would have to determine their status and medically checked and taken to one of the approved facilities. So we will not allow persons to just come into Grenada and mix with the population and go wherever they want to. So if that happens, we would have to get them to see the health officials, and at the same time an immigration officer would have to process them in the manner that we have in place at this time.
Are we open to persons who want to accommodate? For example, I have colleagues who are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who probably would like to come over to Grenada. Are we encouraging persons to accommodate them like myself? And if I so do decide to, what will be required?
Okay, Mikey, excellent question. This is what we are experiencing currently in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, where you have a number of family members over in St. Vincent, and they will like to come home. So what we have established, evacuees coming over will have to be medically cleared before they can integrate within the society. So yes, they will come through the custom, get documented. The health professionals will have to do the necessary screening, and they will then enter into quarantine and will go through that period of quarantine and to be medically cleared. After that is accomplished, they can then be integrated within the families or the communities. But that is the desired option that we would like to see. So if you have persons right now who indicating that they want to come over and you're prepared to host them, let us know and let us do this thing as effectively and efficiently as possible to ensure that we maintain all the protocols that we have established within the state of Grenada.
Mikey, is there another question from you?
Yes, there is. There are Grenadians who are currently working in St. Vincent and the Grenadines who are displaced. Should they decide to board a flight to come to Grenada, would they be required to get a PCR test from St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And we know things are interrupted there, so probably that would hinder, how quickly they can return home. What are we doing about that?
Well, the information that I currently have, the airport is currently closed, so there will be no flight. So nationals who want to get back home, the protocol will kick in. You will have to go through the normal protocol that has been established. But I want to segue to Dr. Brathwaite, because the COVID committee has established norms that must be followed.
Yes, well, if there are individuals, as you said, they can't fly out now, basically. And no individuals can fly out unless, I guess, it's special military or paramilitary type groups. So individuals are mostly going to be coming by boat, and they should go, obviously, report to the customs area, either in Carriacou or here in Grenada. And from there, they will be processed and sent to one of the quarantine sites and assessed. The status, COVID status assessed before they're released into the community. And let me say at this point, I think it is also important and incumbent for us to point out to our residents not to move to take your relatives in without them passing through the official channels. If we do that, then we increase significantly the chances of spread of the disease. I know St. Vincent's been fighting successfully in recent weeks in controlling the problem over there. But if you looked at what was happening even last night, and you saw those crowds accumulated, and most of the people would not have been wearing masks. In any situation like this, people, COVID is going to be the last thing on the mind, but it will have an effect down the road. And so we have to be on guard to be able to quickly pick up individuals who come in who but potentially might have contracted the virus over recent hours.
Thank you, Dr. Brathwaite. Linda Straker, it's back to you for your follow-up questions.
Thanks. Can the police say to us whether or not Carriacou Port will become the official port of entry for evacuees from St. Vincent? So once you get clearance in Carriacou, then you can eventually end up in Grenada. And my question to Mr. Peters, following the immediate eruption, we would have gotten a message from the UE Seismic Research Center with ash and how it would affect airlines and so. I seen earlier this morning someone said that there is ash over the St. Patrick's area. Can you tell us whether or not our weather officers confirm that what we are seeing in the sky is either ash or Sahara dust? Because I think it was Wednesday we would have gotten a notice that there would be a flow of Sahara dust through the atmosphere. So is it Sahara dust or is it ash that is passing over Grenada, particularly in the area of St. Patrick's right now?
Ms. Stricker, I cannot confirm if it's any of the above, but I will not be surprised of it being any of them. But we'll have to get more information for me to confirm which it is.
Ms. Stricker, on the question of persons coming in, I think, yes, there is an official entry point as Hillsborough. I don't know if that situation would change with other directives from the policymakers, we'll see. But any point that the Ministry of Health is available with respect to screening and the immigration officers are there, this is where we would expect persons to come through. As for persons coming into Carriacou, and when you get to Carriacou, you can come to Grenada, that will be a different situation, because the procedures and the protocol of coming to Grenada in response to this would have some requirements that you heard Minister mention just now. You don't know if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. Whatever is the protocol, if you come for 3 weeks to go back, that is what we're going to stick by. If you're a Grenadian and you're coming in and then you're cleared by the health officials and you're done your quarantine, well, yes, we cannot prevent you from coming to the mainland. But persons who are coming in pursuant to the activities in St. Vincent, there would be requirements and we would enforce whatever that policy is.
Linda, anything further from you? Okay, so we have not heard from Linda. Mikey, any final questions from you?
I got one question.
Okay, Junior, you go ahead. Junior, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Earlier, in response to one of my colleagues' question on bringing people that want to come from St. Vincent into Grenada, the Dr. Brathwaite responded about being medically cleared before they come in. Could you explain the term medically cleared and what is the process that they have to undergo to be medically cleared? And is it just the antigen tests that they're looking at to medically clear individuals that's coming in? And the second question that I have, it relates to the first question that I asked in relations to the vaccine, and what does the science tell us about the first dose or one dose vaccine, and how long do that vaccine have to be in a person before it develops some type of protection in the immune system? What does the science tell us, and how effective would that be?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for the questions. The one dose of the vaccine, let me deal with that first. One dose of the vaccine will increase your chances of being able to resist the virus if you are exposed to it. This takes some weeks to kick in, and after 3 weeks or so, you will get some degree of protection, but you will not get full protection until you get the second dose. And for the vaccine that we are using here, this is the same as the one St. Vincent is using. second dose approximately 10 weeks later. Now, some of the individuals coming from St. Vincent would have had their vaccine 6 weeks or 8 weeks earlier, and so they may actually get their second vaccine by the time they get here. And certainly in a week's or two time, we would have had people who might have been fully vaccinated, but they will be still undergoing some process of testing. Now, in terms of medical clearance, I was not referring, obviously, if you sense that someone has some other contagious problem, that person will have to be screened if that person appears to be ill, etc. And that will be done, and temperatures will be taken. But we were referring to medical screening with reference specifically to COVID, because the same protocols that apply for any visitor coming into the island will have to apply for the evacuees coming in to the island. If they were fully vaccinated, then those protocols might be tweaked and to allow easier release from the quarantine place. But outside of that, basically the similar protocols will apply. Of course, the chief medical officer has the discretionary right in certain circumstances, along with Dr. Mitchell, as it's been going on now for many months. They will decide if somebody can be quarantined, if the person might have a house of their own that's empty, and they would allow that person, having been tested and having been found to be negative, to be quarantined in specific locations. So to some extent, individuals might be their situations might be looked at on an individual basis, but in a general basis, the thrust is to make sure that everyone that leaves that center is found to be COVID negative.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brathwaite. Junior, anything further from you?
I don't think I got a clear understanding as to what was the determination of medically cleared. I don't know if I missed part of what he said. Sorry, Mr. Brathwaite.
Okay.
But, are we saying that we're looking at the antigen test to determine if that person is medically cleared?
No.
Or are we saying that if that person doesn't exhibit any type of fever or any type of immediate visible signs, then they're medically cleared?
No.
What does the term medically cleared mean?
Certainly not the question of exhibiting signs is out of the question, because we know about half of individuals who are carrying the virus have basically no symptoms. So to be medically clear from the point of view of COVID, you have to have had a PCR test, and that PCR test has to come back as negative. A nasopharyngeal swab, and that PCR. The rapid antigen allows us, if we got a boat coming in with 50, 100 people on board at one point, you could easily screen and decide, okay, there's less likelihood that these people some individuals have it, and you huddle them together. If you pick up positives, where it is very useful, obviously, if you pick up positives in an individual, to be able to take that individual and quarantine them. That's the main usefulness of the PCR. Pick up a positive individual, take them and quarantine them away from the rest of the family and the individuals that they might be traveling with.
Thank you, Dr. Brathwaite. Junior, I hope you've gotten the explanation now. If not, it will be useful to listen back to the recording once we've finished, because I think we've explained it about 3 times already. So just for efficiency of time this morning. Any other questions from you before I check with the other reporters and we wrap things up?
No, go right ahead. I'll follow up with you for the clarification. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Linda and Mikey, anything further from either of you?
I just wanted to at least get clarity on whether or not we have the exact list of the centers that have been identified as shelters for the evacuees.
And I see that baby Mikey wants to have his say in this press conference. That's okay.
I apologize for that.
No problem, no problem. That's fine. He's a young journalist in training. Mikey, we will be making those details available in due course. It has to be finalized, and of course, we will be announcing and making yourselves as members of the media and members of the public aware. Anything else?
No, that's it for me for today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Linda, anything final from you? Okay, I guess.
No.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, gentlemen, we'll go into the wrap-up session. I think we'll take our final thoughts and comments from everyone. Mr. Peters, anything final for members of the media and the listening and viewing public?
I just want to say to our Grenadian population, what happened in St. Vincent is a natural event, and persons have been affected by that process. And I think it's a time for us to help these persons to get over that situation as much as possible. I don't think we should be too hurried in how soon they leave, because it happens when in Montserrat, when people choose to go back, they died. So I just think we need to help them through that process, and as quick as possible to help the recovery and the state that they're in. They're actually, some will be traumatized by that experience, and we need to pay attention to the social component of the person being that come to our shows for rescue. And I just want once again to ask our population to support the need and understand the needs that are required, as mentioned before, and provide the support where they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. DCP Francois, over to you.
Thank you. I want to make this special appeal to the Grenadian population and remind that our borders are very porous. And in spite of all the best efforts to appoint designated entry points, both at Carriacou and in Grenada, you will find persons who would still attempt to enter the country illegally and cause problems both medically and security-wise for us. So I want to make this special appeal to ask persons to be very vigilant during this period, especially persons who live on the coastline or who have cause to be on our coastlines, etc., and other persons in the general population to look out for any suspicious activities you would see taking place in any of our beaches or other areas, or persons that you suspect would have got here illegally. Try and get that information into the nearest police station in the area where you are, or you can call our police control center at 440-3999 or 911, which is an easier number to remember. We want to police this situation in a way that would assist the people of St. Vincent and at the same time maintain our security controls to protect the people of Grenada. So it is in your interest as well to assist the Royal Grenada Police Force in ensuring that our country remains safe and that your family remains safe. So we ask you, any suspicious activities, any persons you see that you believe did not come through our official entry point, please get on to us so we can have an immediate response to ensure that we maintain the security that we want for Grenada. Thank you.
Thank you, DCP, for those closing thoughts from the RGPF. Dr. Brathwaite?
Thank you, Femia. I'd just like to reassure the public that the Ministry of Health, speaking because many of the Ministry of Health personnel are on the health subcommittee, that they are working assiduously to be on top of this situation. Last night we were scheduled, last evening we were scheduled to have a meeting to look at protocols for the regular protocols for COVID, and immediately our full attention was shifted to this matter. And I am comfortable with all the steps that have been taken to put things in place to be able to handle this situation. A virus, the volcano coming on top of the volcano coming on top of the COVID pandemic is not, it's a bad scene scenario, and double jeopardy indeed. and but it is something that it's something that will test us because it's right on our doorsteps. Our organizational skills are going to be tested at every level. Our adaptability will be tested, and our humanity will also be tested because, as was said, moving away from your home and often perhaps going back, not to be able to go to home at all again because your home might be destroyed, your livestock lost, all your agricultural crops gone, your source of income gone. These are things that we need to put in place, think of as we meet individuals who are coming through from St. Vincent. And I'm sure as it's happened in other disasters that our people will come, they will stand up and be accounted for, and that we can only roll with nature. We can't control, we can't stop COVID from coming or the volcano from erupting. It's about how we handle it, and I'm confident that we have started on the right footing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brathwaite, for those closing thoughts and comments. Minister Garraway?
Thank you very much, Philo, and want to signal to the nation that we are capable and we are able to respond adequately to the unfolding situation within St. Vincent. We have demonstrated in the past that we have the resolve and we have the wherewithal to make good with whatever situation that is before us. As I speak, we have released, and that is the RGPF, the Government of Grenada, Superintendent Sylvan McIntyre, who is currently within St. Vincent, working with NEMO, the disaster office in St. Vincent, to help build capacity to respond to this crisis that is unfolding. He's been there for more than 3 weeks already. I want to say as well that at our meeting last night and this morning, as NEAC, as we respond to this crisis, we have put in place all the mechanism to help respond to the unfolding situation. And one of the response mechanism that is in place is the psychosocial support that will be necessary to help people to cope with this crisis. We understand how traumatic it will be when you are displaced from your home, your regular surrounding, your comfort level will be reduced and so on. And people will need that sort of support to help them to cope. And the Ministry of Social Development, who is charged with this responsibility, is in place to do this. And we are ready, and we will ensure that whoever comes to our country, we will be able to provide that sort of support to them to be able to cope in this trying time. I want to take this opportunity also to thank our stakeholders who, on short notice yesterday, came out to the emergency meeting to respond to this. I don't want to call names because I may not remember all of them, but just to say a special thank you to St. George's University, who readily made themselves available to provide accommodation. And with all the other agencies who have been there and pledged their support and started working from last night and reported this morning that the systems are in place, I want to say a special thank you. And generally, we observe that whenever there is a crisis, it helps to galvanize support within the nation and is an opportunity for us to recognize the challenges that we face as a nation. And it's something that you didn't probably cater for, but now you're called to lend a hand to your brother and sister who is in need. And this is a moment for us to recognize we have been given an opportunity to extend a hand of comfort, a hand of love, a hand of safety to our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent. And let us embrace this moment and do what we are known for, to demonstrate the Grenadian hospitality to brothers and sisters who are displaced. Thank you, and thank you. I want to say a special thank you to P.S. Jones, who have just been entrusted with this significant responsibility, but jump in with both hands and feet and are doing a tremendous job in helping us to coordinate our response in this regard. Thank you very much, P.S. Rhonda Jones. Back to you, P.S. Press Secretary.
P.S. Yes. Thank you very much, Minister. Certainly a very sobering moment for us here, but as Caribbean people, you know, we stand together and we stand united. We must be ready to help our brothers and sisters, but remember, we have to do so responsibly. The governments of both countries, the prime ministers, they have spoken and they have agreed to collaborate on exactly how this evacuation effort will roll out. If in fact the evacuees do come to Grenada, the transportation arrangements will be made, quarantine arrangements, all of that, and further announcements will be made in the coming days as we finalize our preparations on this end. And remember too, there is no guarantee that we will actually receive evacuees from St. Vincent, but we have to stand ready to assist our brothers and sisters. For those with family and friends who are also willing to accept them, remember too that due process must be followed. Yes, you can open your homes to them, but they have to come in through the proper channel. They have to do the quarantine and they have to be medically cleared before they can be integrated into our society. We have to remember that while we extend this hand of assistance, we also continue to be in the middle of a global health crisis. I just want to reiterate before we close off the needed items that Mr. Peters spoke about, which was submitted by the National Emergency Management Organization in St. Vincent, a sister organization to Grenada's NADMA. So they need water tanks, 800 and 1,000 gallon, 5-gallon buckets, folding cots, portable potties, blankets, field tents, field kitchen, sleeping mats, respirator mask with filters, goggles, reflective vest, caution tape, and hygiene kits. Grenadians, any and which way you can help the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we encourage you to do so. Government will also be doing what it can to assist. And finally, the contact numbers for NADMA, should you be willing or in a position to provide assistance, 440-8390, 8391, 8392, also 440-0838. Thank you so much for joining us for this press briefing. We do hope that you have garnered a wealth of information as it relates to the Government of Grenada's response to the unfolding situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We continue to keep our brothers and sisters in our prayers. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much.